Welcome back to another episode of Getting Personal. I'm here today with Pascal, co-founder and CEO at Akord. How are you doing today, Pascal? It's really good to have you on.
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me on, Jack. Pleasure to be here and looking forward to talking all things Kabila, Akord, and NFT storage as well.
Absolutely. Before we get into that, I love to start the conversation by asking, as someone providing infrastructure in the world of Web3 blockchain, as we sit here today, what's your sentiment on this space in general?
Sentiment is good. I feel like we're moving into this new wave of the technology, and that's throwing up some really exciting opportunities and possibilities. And Arweave, the ecosystem that Akord is in, has recently launched the AO computer, a hyper parallel compute layer on top of the Arweave blockchain. I know Hedera blockchain, that ecosystem is just thriving. So a lot of cool stuff going on. And then the macro is obviously we're out of this bear market. Bitcoin's around or surpassing the all-time high. So that's creating excitement. So yeah, there's a lot of things to be positive about, and certainly we're kind of looking forward or looking to the future with excitement, and just can't wait to see how things unfold for us and for the broader ecosystem.
Absolutely. Arweave, for those maybe potentially hearing about it for the first time, what are we talking about when we say that word?
Yeah, so Arweave is often under the radar and kind of surprises me. Obviously, I'm biased, but it offers such a powerful solution in Web3 because it's a blockchain that's been designed from the very beginning to permanently store data. And that addresses a particular pain point for NFTs, but obviously has a lot of other great applications and use cases, archival. But you could think of Arweave like humanity's hard drive, so anyone can write to Arweave and anyone can read from it. It stores data with a pay once, store forever model, so you pay upfront for storage. And it has a on-chain endowment mechanism, so you're basically paying into this endowment. A portion goes to the miner as an initial incentive, and the rest, about 80%, goes into this endowment. And that basically ensures that the storage of your data that you upload in that moment will be covered for at least the next 200 years. And Arweave's able to do that because the cost of storage has been decreasing in a predictable fashion for the last 50 years, I think, at about 30%. But the endowment is structured on the assumption that storage will decrease by 0.5%. So the whole thing is structured 60x on the conservative side. And that's so that we can be super confident that the tokenomics, that the maths, that the structure is there to guarantee that storage. So yeah, that's a kind of high-level overview of Arweave.
And you mentioned NFTs, which we'll talk more about. Of course, we're all about NFTs here at Kabila, and we have like you said, a thriving ecosystem on Hedera, especially NFTs as well. But you said there's other applications, and I'm thinking of those people that use Google Drive or any kind of cloud storage in their everyday life. How does Arweave and even maybe Akord apply to those everyday people that are maybe not in Web3 yet, but this will be useful for them in the very near future?
Yeah, exactly. That's where Akord comes in. So Arweave, in and of itself, is going to be quite hard for someone who's not technical to access. So we come in as that layer on top, and Akord offer digital vaults. So we abstract away a lot of the complexity of Web3 and Arweave, so you don't need any AR tokens to get going. We give you 100 megabytes for free. That may not seem a lot when you compare it to like Dropbox, but bearing in mind, when you use that 100 megabytes, you'll never have to pay to store that data again. So if you upload one video for 100 megabytes, then that's it. It's permanently stored forever. So it's incredibly valuable in that sense. So yeah, we give you some free storage. You don't need AR tokens to store. We abstract away paying the network. You just pay us in fiat, and we provide like a really intuitive UI web app. So it kind of will feel like Dropbox or Google Drive, and you can just drag and drop folders and files. And we have end-to-end encryption as well. So Arweave by default is public, but then if you're a personal user and you want to store, let's say, for example, I actually store all of my kids' photos on Akord and Arweave because that's data that's maybe not valuable to anyone else, but for me, it's incredibly valuable. I never want to lose that data. And so I use private vaults on Akord, and only I control the keys to that data. It's end-to-end encrypted. So yeah, we have a lot of people that are using Akord in this private context for personal data, but also business data as well. As like an archival backup solution, it's really useful for businesses of any size. But yeah, we have a whole bunch of different use cases on Arweave. NFT projects is the strongest use case.
Yeah.
But we have, for example, NGOs and organizations like the Mahamati Foundation. They are preserving ancient Buddhist texts. So they actually have translations and teachings from lamas that have been passed down through the generations, audio recordings in Tibetan that are recorded and stored on Arweave via these Akord vaults.
That's pretty cool.
We also have, like an insurance broker and an accountant and a whole bunch of businesses and lots of creators as well. So artists, illustrators, photographers who are just backing up, or we can actually mint tokens directly onto Arweave as well. So we're not in the league of yourselves in terms of minting NFTs, but we do also have that option as well on Akord.
And would the two key words that are coming up for me is, you mentioned permanent a few times, and the fact that it's decentralized, like those two things together, what kind of benefits, like if I want, let's say I want to switch, or would you use still a Google Drive or a Dropbox together with this, or can you do everything on Akord? And do you see us moving away from more of a centralized storage to decentralized if it has more benefits?
So yeah, Arweave is permanent, and there is a protocol for removing data from Arweave, but for example, if you upload something that's a copyright infringement, you can use this protocol to signal to the miners that this data shouldn't be stored, and then it's up to the miners to stop storing that data. They have to comply with the laws in their jurisdiction. But really, we have to think about Arweave as being permanent, and essentially you can't delete data. So if you're a business, you shouldn't upload data that could fall into GDPR, CCPA, those kind of data regulations, because you can have requests to delete that data, and that can get you in a tricky spot. And yeah, there's a premium upfront cost. Over the long term, that actually works out cheaper than cloud if you're planning on storing data for a lifetime or more. But yeah, so there's tons of data which, it has questionable value, and we just don't want to store it more than a couple of years, let's say. So in that scenario, like cloud makes a ton of sense. But yeah, really for valuable data, for data that you can't afford to lose, and also for data that you intend to trade, Arweave is, in my opinion, the only choice. And we give people the easiest access, the easiest route to getting that data on Arweave. But Akord, actually, we offer the digital vaults on cloud storage as well. Okay. Because we have some users that they maybe want to manage the data and manage it in an encrypted form. And you can use the vaults with end-to-end encryption, and it's basically like a more secure version of Dropbox, because they will encrypt data, say at rest, but not necessarily in transit, and they control the keys as well. So the cloud solution on Akord is not fully decentralized, but at least it's end-to-end encrypted, and you have some more ownership because you control the keys. And in that way, you could use the cloud vaults as like a staging environment, before you maybe want to collaborate with people, because you can invite people into the vaults and we have messaging and note creation and stuff like that. So people actually use the vaults to collaborate on a project, and then maybe when it's at a certain point, they say, okay, like this data, all of the data, we're going to move it over to a permanent vault, and then put it on chain. For example, the insurance broker, right? They onboard clients and they go through a process of collecting personal data, and they do this in private cloud vaults. But at the end, the insurance certificate is published in a public on-chain vault on Arweave, because they want that radical transparency and the immutability that the blockchain gives them for the certificate. But the other data is more sensitive, and so they choose the end-to-end encryption and the cloud vaults for that. So yeah, it's kind of a versatile tool.
Yeah, I think having that middle ground, and like we're all about giving creators options, right? I think options are great. It's not necessarily or, but and then using what makes more sense in any given situation, right? So that's really cool. I'd love to, again, on permanent storage. We've got Ordinals, right? We've recently had Hashinals go live on Hedera, which is the equivalent kind of standard where you can inscribe on the Hedera hash graph. We've got people inscribing on other blockchains such as Bitcoin. What's your take on that, and how does that compare to something like Arweave?
That's great. I think Ordinals is cool, and I only learned about Hashinals the other day, so kind of keen to hear more from you on Hashinals. But I think that's great for us because it's bringing on-chain storage into focus, and people are talking about that. The question there is in terms of Ordinals, it's not really scalable. With Arweave, you can upload any kind of data and it scales. So we've had users uploading single files that are 15 gigabytes in size, just dragging and dropping those files into the UI. We're using the CLI, and then 5 minutes later they have the transaction ID and they're good to go, and it's stored forever. I think there are just certain limitations with other blockchains where they're not going to be able to compete. And then if you start thinking about using Bitcoin to store data at scale, like opening up a massive use case like archival, the example I gave you of Mahamati Foundation, let's imagine we want to get all of humanity's precious data, the cultural heritage, on the blockchain. You're not going to use Bitcoin for that. Arweave would be the choice there. But yeah, I think Ordinals is really cool. Big Bitcoin fan, and I know some people think that NFTs should not be on Bitcoin, but and I'm not an expert, or I'm not super embedded in that ecosystem or that movement, but I think it's great personally. So how about Hashinals? Similar concept, or are there any differences to Ordinals?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a tech person, but with Hashinals, you've kind of got all of the features, I'd say, of Bitcoin, but on a tech layer that's more efficient, more scalable, and cheaper. There's even a part to Hashinals where it can elevate the experience for Ordinals, for example, as kind of a layer beneath it. I wouldn't know how to explain the details of that, but there's this idea that not only can we have Hashinals on Hedera, but the technology of Hashinals can elevate, take the user experience, the speed, the scalability of Ordinals or other kinds of inscriptions on other networks to a better level, right? Some of the downsides of Ordinals that you mentioned could be improved potentially with HCS. I believe it's HCS1, which is the Hashinals kind of code. So it's exciting. I think it's something that it's quite recent on Hedera. It's also something familiar that we have on Hedera now that people from the outside recognize. So that's pretty cool. Maybe they'll come over to Hedera to check out Hashinals and they'll stay for the rest. So it's a nice little gateway. So yeah, there's I think options again. Hashinals, Ordinals, Arweave. we need to touch on IPFS as well. I know that's an interesting
Yeah, let's get
topic,
into
I
that.
think. Let's get into that because we've had IPFS for NFTs on Kabila. Like within Kabila tools, we've had hundreds of creators mint NFTs and use IPFS to upload their metadata. And with Arweave, I know there's you can also upload and store your metadata, right? In a different fashion with different kind of price points and different benefits. One of them being that permanent element, right? Where I'd love to hear from you that the kind of the versus. I think there's a blog on your website where you talk about IPFS versus Arweave, right? So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts first. Like, I can speak at length on Arweave versus IPFS, but I'm also interested to hear what was it that brought you over to Arweave and Akord? Because as you mentioned, you were on IPFS. What changed? And
so one was with IPFS. I think from what I understand, there's a certain subsidy where certain providers have been able to offer it for free for periods of time, and I think there's still providers that offer it, but the one that we were using, we received an email saying that it was no longer going to be free, and that they were kind of making adjustments as well. So we were going to have to restructure anyway to kind of merge with this new kind of standard they were implementing. And we'd been looking into Arweave for some time. We knew about the extra benefits, but because the provider that we were using, an IPFS, was free, not just for us but for the creators, we thought whilst it lasts, let's make the most of it. I think that was the thought process. But when we came to that point of like, okay, now we need to make a decision. Do we restructure and continue with IPFS and pay, or do we restructure and go with Arweave and pay and reap the benefits of Arweave, including that permanent storage element, right? And I think the creator flow within Kabila tools when minting, when creating the metadata and uploading it, will also be more seamless with the Akord integration. So I'm quite excited about that. Whereas with the previous, you had to go to another website, set up an account, come back, do this, do that. So now it's going to be more seamless. So that's also, the less steps, the better with, when you're minting NFTs, when you're a creator, the less code, the better, the less steps, the better, the easier, the better. So yeah, I think there's a few points there that you could maybe pull the thread on if you like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's interesting. I think for us, we're drawing this line for people to say, think about this like off-chain and on-chain storage. And people often confuse IPFS, the pinning services, and Filecoin, or they just kind of use those terms interchangeably. But all of those solutions are off-chain. And when you're choosing an off-chain solution, you're going to run these risks that because they're basically contract-based, or they're dependent on maintenance on your part, and there may be retrieval fees involved and so on. And we've seen, I think the service you were mentioning, if you don't mind me saying, NFT storage, they changed things up, and then I think what's it, Estuary NFT, Estuary and Always NFT, they closed down recently, pinning services. And you just run that risk if you're using a service, you're paying a monthly fee, like you would with Pinata. Is that service still going to be around next year, 2 years, and 3 years? And as a creator, if you're making this promise that I'm selling this object to you, this thing, and that one day you'll be able to sell it as well, if there's this underlying idea that at some point the thing that we believe we're owning and trading could disappear or be edited, someone could lose it, or it could be lost, deleted in any way, then that completely undermines the value of what you're trading. So I think in the IPFS docs themselves, they mention that these pinning services they list, there's no guarantee that these pinning services will exist in the future. So starting with IPFS is not a storage solution. So there's garbage collection, and the network will only serve data if it's pinned or if it's held by a node. So then we have pinning services that come along to try and solve that problem. And then Protocol Labs, who created IPFS, also created Filecoin, which was an attempt to create an incentive solution for storage. But as you alluded to as well, the storage that's happening on Filecoin and therefore on IPFS is subsidized through the Fill Plus program. And if you look at the data, which is readily available on their sites, 99% of all data on Filecoin is subsidized through Fill Plus. So they only have 1% of their user base, which is actually paying for the data. So it's not a sustainable model. And even Filecoin is not on-chain data. There's the Filecoin virtual machine, and they've tried to pitch perpetual storage, but that's still dependent on you making sure that that contract is always funded. So, there is always that complexity. And if anyone's tried to use Filecoin, just try, how do you even get going? So that's why people end up using pinning services like Pinata. They're much simpler to use, but they're way more expensive. They're actually quite costly. And if you extrapolate those monthly costs over a few years, then actually you're going to be saving with Arweave and Akord, within a few years, 4 or 5, I think is the maths. So yeah, that's the arguments that we, or the points that we highlight in some of the content on our website. And really we try and boil it down for people because, to be honest, I think there is a lot of confusing language that those services put out, where they use the language of blockchain and permanence and timestamps and immutability. They use these phrases, but the services they're offering are off-chain. So, and then IPFS and pinning services and Filecoin, yes, they are decentralized. And yes, in some ways there are improvements on cloud storage, but it's just not good enough for certain use cases, to be frank. And if you're a creator and you want your creation to have the most value possible, and to maintain that value and not have that value undermined, you need to have the assets, the creation itself on chain. And right now, Arweave is the only solution at scale.
I think that's what drove Ordinals, right? That the idea that creators wanted to make sure that their creations, their digital assets, were going to live on, right, beyond themselves. People started waking up to all the points you just made. They're like, we need to find a solution, and the community was like, we need to start inscribing on Bitcoin, or just find ways. And I think that's what drove it, and I think that's what drove Hashinals on Hedera and probably all the other inscriptions on other networks. So having Arweave, like you say, as a more scalable, cost-effective solution in parallel to all of those, I think is just great for creators overall. So that's exciting. I think the Hedera community, our HBAR NFT creators, are going to be really fond of this new integration. The flow that I talked about, but also this idea, right, that whatever they mint now is going to be permanent. I think it's a big shift, and it gives that security and certainty as a creator who's putting all this work, time, and effort into, whether it's the art or the NFT that's tied to a utility, whatever that NFT is. It's like, okay, well, this now is on chain, and it's forever, right?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's that certainty, that security, the peace of mind.
Yeah.
And again, if you're trading this data, if you're just paying once, putting it on the blockchain, then you can go and sell that data, and that's it. Your job is done. You don't need to worry about maintaining the storage fees or paying to retrieve
Yeah.
the asset if you need it, or if your new owner needs it. Yeah, it's always there and independent of any provider. So it's important to mention. People say to us, well, what if Akord ceases to exist? For an individual NFT, right, you would have the transaction ID, that's fine. And if it's public, say NFTs being sold on Kabila, yeah, it's easy to just find that asset on the Arweave blockchain. But let's imagine you have a vault and it's got private data, and you have other public vaults with a lot of data inside. Some people are uploading tens of thousands of files in one go.
Yeah.
So what if Akord, the company, ceases to exist? How can I easily find all of this data? How can I decrypt it? So what's cool about Arweave is you can deploy, you can upload any kind of data, including code. So you can run websites and applications directly off of the blockchain, and then they don't need any maintenance or ongoing fees. They just run forever on the blockchain. There are certain limitations, because you don't want to have dependencies if you're trying to run a website, and you want to make sure that that code is just going to be able to run independently without any updates, let's say.
Yeah.
But we're on the point of releasing Akord Explorer, which is essentially a lightweight dApp that will run directly on the Arweave blockchain, and all you'll need is your recovery phrase, and you'll connect and instantly be retrieved, and instantly have your vaults, your public and private vaults, displayed, retrieved, and you'll be able to decrypt any of that private data. It will also act as a kind of portal into Arweave, so we'll have a big explore search section, and people can tag their public vaults as well. And let's say you search NFT on Akord Explorer, and then you'll find every single public vault that was tagged with NFT. So also a cool tool to enable like perpetual discoverability of permanent data. So yeah,
Nice.
it's also important to think about, okay, it's permanently stored, but then how can I permanently access that data? Yeah, there are blockchain explorers, but they're not always easy to use for people. So we wanted to have this solution here, so people can be confident that their data and their access to it is not dependent on us as a company.
Yeah, it reminds that we actually, for our V2, the latest release of our tools, we actually included, for that very reason, an IPFS explorer. So people could put in the IPFS link and see the image of the NFT, see all the metadata, without, like you say, having to go through Hashscan or whatever it is you need to go through to see what's attached to that link, right? And you probably won't be able to see the image anyway. So
Exactly.
with Arweave, we'll end up having the same thing, where people take the line of code or whatever it is, the link or whatever you end up getting as a creator when you upload that metadata, so you can view it through the Kabila platform as well, which I think is
Could
pretty
you talk about how that's going to look and feel for the Kabila users when our integration goes live, and now they can mint their assets onto Arweave, have the token on Kabila, token on
Yeah.
Hedera, and then available through Kabila, but then the assets on Arweave. How's that experience going to look? Because I've been obviously following the integration. Our developers have been working with your developers, and but I've just been following the kind of back end flow of that, and yeah, I'm keen to hear about the UX for your customers. And
I'm keen myself, because I haven't actually seen it yet. I imagine it's getting close. I think first comes the back end, and I think that's what they're working on at the moment, and then the front will come. I will be doing a tutorial, as I do for all of the tools. Within Kabila tools, we have when you go into each one, you have an overview tutorial. So I'll be recording that at some point before the release, which is when I'll get to have a play and whatnot. But based on what we have, I can say that, as I mentioned before, there'll be that part where you don't have to leave the platform, whereas right now you do. So there'll be you'll enter the NFT information into the table that we have. Again, it's no code, so it's really just you're entering the name of the NFT, the details, the attributes. You might be attaching some kind of file to the NFT, and then before uploading, there'll be, in this case, there'll be a fee to pay. So I guess that will pop up first. It will say, this is going to be uploaded to Arweave. This is how much it costs. Accept. You sign the transaction, and then it will just go ahead and do its thing in the back end, and then that will go. You'll go from that part of the metadata straight on to minting the NFT. So we've got this flow where you start from nothing to generate to inputting the metadata, to generating it, to uploading it, and then minting the token on Hedera all in one flow. And then it will just appear. It just appears in the Treasury wallet as an NFT.
That's awesome. Yeah, I knew more or less that you guys were going to be abstracting a lot of that complexity for your users, and yeah, that flow just sounds great. And yeah, we're actually talking to other marketplaces on different blockchains, trying to integrate with more projects like yourselves operating in different ecosystems, and yeah, finding that solution to just take away that hassle. We think about Web3 at Akord as being a kind of evolution on top of Web2, and it shouldn't be considered in opposition. Yeah. Web2 delivered a lot of great things, like great user experience. A lot of the apps that we use on a daily basis, they're Web2 and they deliver a lot of value. And I think if Web3 is going to be successful and achieve mainstream adoption, we need to start thinking less in just pure ideals, like it's decentralized or it's permanent. Yes, those things are important, but great user experience and just taking away the complexity of interacting with the blockchain and paying for services and different tokens, that is really key to achieving that adoption that we all want to see. And yeah, coming back to your initial question around what's my sentiment, that does, really give me hope, because I joined the crypto space in 2017, and at that point, no one was really talking about these things, and my background is product design, so that's what I think about the most, and what I saw early on in my work in Web3 was no one was talking about this, and yes, the technological solutions and the ideals that spurred those innovations, they're super important. Yes, probably the most important, but not the only thing. And a critical component is to build on and not leave behind the best of Web2. Because people are not going to move over if it means hanging around and watching a spinner for 10 minutes, or going over and downloading this thing and then coming back and going to that site to get this token and then go over to social to verify. This, we need to make it a lot simpler, and that's why it was great working with you guys, because we definitely got that sense from the beginning. As soon as we checked out your tools and products and just interacting with your developers, you guys just kind of got it and were working on a solution that was really taking into consideration the UX and making this as easy as possible.
It's that missing link still, isn't it? I think we're getting close, but it's providing those benefits of Web3 without it feeling Web3, right? Because things just feel Web3, and that's just not. If it feels Web3, it needs to feel Web2 with the benefits of Web3, maybe. It just needs to feel seamless. It needs to feel easy, not complicated, right? It needs to be, I want to reap the benefits from this, and I can just log in and do it. No complications, no friction.
If it feels Web3, it should just be the good stuff. Like, I got this thing in my wallet. That's the cool stuff that is the layer on top. But when it comes to just paying for something, logging in, creating an account, getting going, those things should be as effortless. That's what we should be aiming for. We recently recorded this video where, just to plug Akord a bit more, we timed creating an account to uploading the first file on Arweave, and it was 48 seconds, and I think we could shave some time off of that. So, I think yeah, that kind of less clicks, not sending people away, all those things you were talking about. It's just super important.
Yeah, it's what it's all about. It's one of the reasons at Kabila we're building that all-in-one solution as well. Because right now, when I have a call with, maybe it's a Web2 brand, they're Web3 curious, and they want to start entering the space, and as soon as you tell them, look, you've got to go and set up you can set up the wallet and you've got the tools here, but then before we release the marketplace, we would say, you've got the secondary marketplace over there, then you've got the Discord over the back, then you've got to go over here for, for the IPFS and bring that code back to do the metadata. There's this fragmentation that we have right in Web3, and as a brand or a creator who wants to just tokenize their community, tokenize their brand, monetize their creativity and skill set, they want to have everything in one place. So we're really building for that, for the world, because the Web3 bubble is still quite small, as you know yourself. So having an all-in-one solution where you have the wallet, the tools, the marketplace, the equivalent of like a Discord or token gated social space, all in one place. That's when I'll be able to go to Web2 brands and say, look, onboarding is easier now.
Yeah, tell me about the token gated access, because our teams were talking about that, because we're developing token gated access into Arm
Nice.
vaults, and I know I was speaking to Adrian actually today, your COO, and he was saying that you guys are close to wrapping up token gated access on your platform. I'm interested to hear about that, how it works for you.
So there's actually going to be an element, we call it like the token gated box. I don't know if that will be the final name, but think of it as a token gated Patreon where you get access to certain content, right? So we use Discord, Telegram at the moment in Web3. I think Discord has served us really well because of the token gated potential, and now Telegram is starting to be used a bit more, I think, just because of the simplicity of it compared to Discord. But it's not for now. They haven't integrated many Web3 features. Could be the token gated actions or token gated box that we're looking to develop to incentivize certain behavior within a community based on using tokens, or maybe there's a voting mechanism that you need for your community. So that should be something considered within the tokenized community if you're more like more of a DAO. Having that feed, that communications feed, and maybe different tiers of access for different NFT holders. Again, you can do this with Discord, but Discord has a bunch of other things that you don't really need. And having a really simple, you're talking about UX UI, where you've got what you need, and it's clean and it's simple, and you sell your passes to your token gated space, which would be, we don't even need to call them NFTs anymore. They're just passes, they're memberships, right? They're membership passes to your token gated social space, where you have maybe different levels of access to different levels of content or whatever you're offering your tokenized community. So that's what we're looking to build out with what we call the plazas. We haven't talked a lot about them yet because we are hoping to get the first iteration out soon. But when the time comes, that's when we'll start really talking about them and making more content about the features and the usability of these plazas.
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of like the next wave of NFTs and the use of that technology.
Yeah.
If the first wave was a JPEG, now it's like, okay, well, what can the token do as well? It can get you access into something else, and then the JPEG is like a ticket or a membership, and then there's a whole other experience behind it, and that's really interesting to me. So yeah, I'm very excited to see that launch on your platform. And I also wanted to know, what are you seeing with NFT creators? Where are your NFT creators coming from? From the ecosystem, or are you seeing artists or illustrators from Web2 or other ecosystems that are kind of coming over and looking for new opportunities?
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more Web2 people, if we want to say it that way, that are seeing the potential of the technology to do things in a more decentralized manner. I'll give you an example. A filmmaker who had a film release on Netflix, and of course, as soon as it's released on Netflix or owned by Netflix, then it's not really yours anymore, right? You can't really do much with it outside of that, well, depending on the deal. But in this case, it was like fully owned by Netflix. He was the director, producer of it. But then when he wanted to maybe stream it over here or take it over there, there wasn't that possibility. So I think in that frustration, the idea of doing a decentralized movie or decentralized movie make, he called it defilm, so decentralized filmmaking, where he has an audience already. So why not use NFTs to crowdfund direct, potentially with voting mechanism on, so you could allow the community to get involved in the direction in certain elements of the movie and the characters, and then everybody owns it together. And then maybe you're a holder, and in the future you're watching that movie and you're like, I was part of that. I helped crowdfund it. I helped maybe create it in certain ways. So I think we're going to see tokenized communities really become the driving force of, whether it be startups or films or music or, all the different industries, where people can come together around a common idea, common, vision, and just do it, come together and do it through this new technology, because it really allows that in a quite an easy way. And it's just going to get easier and easier and more accessible, I think, for people to do that.
Yeah. So it's interesting you said, you had the example of a filmmaker, because we have someone in our community who's a filmmaker.
Okay.
He's been pushing us for token gated access because he knew it was on the roadmap, and he wanted to achieve a similar result, which was find a kind of more bottom up approach to generating revenue from his films, and kind of own that process and the way the data is distributed and controlled and ultimately owned by him. So yeah, our token gated access is still in private beta, and we have support for Ethereum and Solana tokens, so you can mint on those chains and then gate access into content on Arweave. But I think we're going to be looking at Hedera supporting tokens on Hedera, and obviously on Arweave and Tezos and some Avalanche, some other chains. But yeah, I've also been thinking about that a lot as a really great use case or onboarding flow, which is Web2 creators who have already built an audience, or even new creators. I think it's hard for Web3 right now to compete with platforms like YouTube if you're trying to find somewhere where you could build an audience or plug into a massive potential audience from the get-go. But where Web3 could maybe make big inroads right now is as an alternative to Patreon, where, okay, you've already got this audience over here on YouTube or on X, but now you want to sell something, or you want to release some kind of content tutorial or what have you, and then having these tools like we're discussing on Kabila or on Akord, it really, I think, is going to appeal, especially for those creators that are just looking for new opportunities, because you not only get your audience that you're bringing over from Web2, but you can potentially tap into the ecosystem that you're using within Web3.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, each ecosystem has its own kind of passionate tribe, and when they see like a new creator come into the ecosystem, then that can generate a lot of hype quite quickly. So I think
Absolutely.
the more and more we'll see these Web2 creators, if you will, who will see these opportunities and come aboard, start experimenting, and that's going to raise the bar in terms of quality. I'm really excited about seeing like professional, traditional career illustrators and artists, and I know there are many of those already in Web3, but most of my career was in the creative industries in London, and my network from those days, almost all of them are not in Web3, and I see a tremendous amount of value for them to enter the space, and they're kind of warming up to it and thinking about it, and some of them dipped their toes in the last cycle. So yeah, I think it's a matter of time, and there will be a certain tipping point where enough of those creatives and creators come into Web3, and then the rest see the opportunities that are there. And yeah, it will be a tipping point. So exciting to
Yeah,
see that
I
day.
couldn't agree more. I think going back to that point about UX UI, that together with education, I think those two things will really bring that tipping point around. And I try every day. You know, my pinned tweet right now is a simple phrase: convert your followers to holders, because that's
Mm.
exactly what we're talking about, right? It's convert them to holders so you can then give them access to something and monetize your content, monetize your creativity in a similar fashion to what how people do it with Patreon, but it's a new avenue. I also use emails as an example. Own the relationship with your followers. Not don't allow these centralized social media platforms to own it. I mean, they're great for reach, but ultimately your account could be shut down tomorrow. So make sure you safeguard and convert, especially those super fans, those loyal followers that want more of you, because they really do. And you can release NFTs, and you can tokenize that community, own it, that ownership economy that's coming, and then you can use that as a starting point to monetize whatever you want to bring to the world, right? So I also look forward to that tipping point and seeing, like you say, creators come through that know the game, they know the content game, and they're just looking for new
Mm.
opportunities, right? And so when the UI and UX is there, I think we're going to see. I think it's going to happen pretty quick once it starts.
Yeah, I think you guys have got the potential to really open that up with what you're doing, because you're approaching it in this holistic way with all of the tools that you're developing. Um, it's got that first layer of the launch pad and then the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're trying to do with Plathers, um, is that next layer and giving those creators the complete platform, so they don't need to go anywhere else, and their audience doesn't need to go anywhere else, and they have all of the tools there to um, either bring over their Web2 audience or build something completely new. And the ownership point is really interesting, because it's like it can be two-way as well. You can own that audience and that community, and but they can also own, be part of owning
Yeah,
the rewards or the benefits and the fruits of what that community produces. And
absolutely.
there are various ways of achieving that. And what will be interesting is seeing how we and you guys get pushed by those creators, because our roadmap is influenced the most by the creative and
Yeah,
creators, the creative types and the creators within our community. They're the ones who are, you know, it's just in their nature to start kind of hacking things and throwing out the what ifs, and can we
yeah.
have this because I want to achieve that. And so the more of those people we get into Web3 in general, and then in particular our projects, I think that's really exciting as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been the same with Kabila for, since the tools were released. We've had, consistent feedback from those using the tools. And it's really shaped Kabila to what it is today. That's another unique aspect of Web3, right? There's such an intimacy between the customer and the company. There's this
Mm.
community, we're friends nearly. These creators and us, we're creators at heart as well. And there's this relationship around just creating. We're creating the tools, you're creating with the tools, you give us feedback, we improve them. And there's this really nice symbiosis that's allowing, Kabila to become what it is. So yeah, it's that process is invaluable.
Yeah, yeah. Can you tell me a bit about the history of Kabbalah, because you guys are pretty early on the scene, right? And you have a strong community already. How did that come around so quickly?
So Kabila is around 2.5 years old. Manu, the founder, he was one of the original NFT creators on Hedera. So he
Mm.
started off creating NFTs. Uh, stumbled across all of the friction points, and there wasn't really much NFT infrastructure at that time. I think at one point they were minting NFTs, and then they realized they were fungible tokens with an image. It was like they were selling them in DMs. There was no marketplace, there's no launch pad, you know. Then they slowly started to appear. But around that time, Manu saw the opportunity and also the necessity to provide, you know, this kind of infrastructure, not just for the Hedera community, but he saw the bigger picture of what we were just talking about, right? About this ownership economy that's going to be coming in the next 5 to 10 years, and that we need a solution for that. So he, from creating pixelated cats and animals, which was his project, and selling those to the community and building a small community around that, he then started Kabila together with Adrian, the you've been talking with, and then, you know, there's 10, 11 of us now, and it's been 2.5 years, and it's, you know, gone from being a wallet with 2 tools to 3, 4 tools to 7 to 10, to the marketplace. We've got the Kabila Academy now, where, you know, education is just as important as the tools. You can have the tools, but if people don't understand the potential of the tools, then, you know, you can't really onboard, right? Onboarding through education, and then with, you know, the best UI UX is kind of the recipe that we look to nail. And it's just it's an ongoing process, right, of refining, removing, getting feedback, improving the tools every, you know, there's always features that we're updating on. We have an update going out today, actually, and it's just ongoing. It's a work in progress, and maybe in a few years, when we've got the plazas and, you know, all of the tools fully fleshed out, we'll be in a position to say that we have that all-in-one solution that we're working towards, right, for the world out there, for the creator economy.
Yeah, so many great products. The origin stories are the founders or founder seeking to solve their own friction points that they have in trying to achieve something, or some kind of problem they have, and it's driven from this, I need to solve this for myself, and actually this is going to be useful for a ton of other people as well. So
yeah, I don't think Manu could have imagined that he'd be where he is today, like doing what he's doing, when he started out creating those NFTs just for the fun of it, you know, because it was during that time where, you know, you create an NFT and it just sold for silly money. You know, that was the time that he kind of got introduced to these things. So I think if you would have asked him back then if he would be building what he's building now with Kabila, with the team, I think he probably would have said that. I mean, he's an entrepreneur. He's, you know, he is quite entrepreneurial, but I still think, especially how far we've come, with, you know, in 2.5 years, and in big part thanks to Hedera, you know, the technology layer that we have, and the SDKs, and the fact that you can program in languages that are familiar to, you know, devs that are not Web3 native. That's been a big part, I think, of the speed. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride. Still got a long way to go, but yeah, going strong.
Yeah, it's been great to see the success that you guys are having, because I feel like right now the narratives in Web3 is kind of AI or real world assets, or certain ecosystems that are getting hype, like Farcaster. But NFTs is kind of often like, oh, that's the last cycle, or, you know. But if we think about the hype cycle, you know, there's the technology trigger, the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, the slope of enlightenment, and the plateau of productivity. I think that's how it goes. And, you know, all of these revolutionary technologies, like the railroads and radio and internet computing, even like Bitcoin, right, AI, everything goes through this cycle. And I think NFTs are on that cycle. And arguably, you could say we're in this trough of disillusionment. Not saying that you're disillusioned, but many people in Web3 are saying, right, you know, NFTs is over. But how many times have we heard people say, like, you know, Bitcoins are over or whatnot? Yeah. You're just falling into that trap of not seeing the bigger picture and the fundamental utility of the technology, which is data ownership. And that doesn't go away just because we went through a bear market and the number of mints, you know, dropped down like 90% or whatever. The fact that, like, your project has seen tremendous success, and Adrian was showing me some stats that you guys have produced this year, and it's like phenomenal. So people are just too caught up in the new narratives and not seeing the bigger picture of
Yeah.
where we are with NFT technology. And, I think that is just something that, will be nice to see kind of play out as the technology evolves and we kind of come up into the slope of enlightenment. You know, that will be interesting to see, and you guys will be really well positioned to capitalize on that. But yeah, it's just a matter of time, in my opinion, and I think will happen. We'll see like a new kind of bull market in NFTs. It may look different, it may
That's
not be
it.
the same kind of content, the same kind of creators. But in my opinion, it's still early days. It's far from over. It's just like, just left the starting line.
Yeah, I think when people say it's over and NFTs are dead, maybe they are in its old form, right? Like you're saying, we had that first wave. Now we've got this new wave with new platforms and new technology, new awareness, new applications. So it's like, well, this could be even more exciting. It's kind of like an evolution, right? So I think they're far from dead, other than the fact that the last cycle was more focused on one thing, and now we're going to bring in more utility and maybe more substance. I think there'll be a bit of both, but there'll be that nuance, right? Which I think is quite exciting, for sure. The fundamentals haven't changed. It's just the sentiment. It's like a roller coaster.
Well, I think what we're trying to push for in our own small way is that this new wave is built on permanent storage, because we think back to the first wave. I don't know if you saw that famous Elon tweet where someone was tweeting about NFTs and he basically replied, if it's not encoded on a blockchain, it's not worth anything. And at that point, everyone in the Arweave ecosystem was like, we do that. So yeah, that was a big criticism, and it was completely valid. Like people, the right click save as, and really, if the data's not on chain, then what are you trading? Like if the token's on Ethereum or Solana, but what people are buying, which in that first wave was the JPEG, the image of the art.
Yeah.
If that's somewhere, like even in, a lot of projects were just storing it on AWS or a centralized server, and people were rightly tweeting these little experiments where they were publishing a collection, selling the NFTs, and then changing the metadata and changing the imagery afterwards, just as a stunt to show like these things are worthless because I can just go and change them to, an image of the poo emoji. I think one guy did, and so that this new wave is already addressing that, and in our part, in our small way, the part that we're playing is to add in that foundational permanent storage.
Is there anything else that we haven't touched on today regarding Akord, Arweave, the integration with Kabila? Like any points that we haven't discussed that you'd like to touch on before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think something that we were just talking about before we had that technical issue, so I don't know if it will make the edit, but I remember now we were talking about moving into this new wave of NFTs, and what we're trying to do on Akord's side by promoting obviously our services, but also trying to educate people around the decision between off-chain and on-chain storage and the benefits of having those NFTs, the assets stored on Arweave, is in this new wave, it can be built from the ground up with on-chain storage. And we saw a lot of criticism in the previous bull market and hype cycle around NFTs that they can just be edited and the metadata can be changed and they're just worthless and you're trading stuff that has no value. And yeah, I think addressing that is going to be foundational to making sure that this new wave is built from the ground up where value is baked in, and then people can really be trading on the creative benefits, the creative sensibilities, or if it's art that they really love, or if it's entry into a community utility and whatnot. But the actual assets, the metadata, is all permanently stored and isn't going anywhere. And so there's just this base level of trust and confidence. So yeah, that was one thing that I wanted to mention, and I hope that our integration is a kind of signal to the market and that more follow.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's great that you guys are doing that, but I think it's also great for you guys if the whole space is operating in this more, well, I would say, in this more responsible way in ensuring that their creators have access to permanent storage. And so the space, the movement, if you will, as a whole can move forward and just like address those most basic of criticisms. And then we can get into discussing, getting excited about the actual creations and content itself. So yeah, that was one thing that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, super excited for our integration to go live and to talk about it more and see how see the data coming from Kabila, see the creators' work appearing on Arweave via Akord. That would be really cool. And yeah, we'll for our part, we'll definitely help promote that content and all the fabulous work you guys are doing.
Nice. Yeah, I think today's discussion as well, it will just be really insightful as well, right? For the community on Hedera and beyond, on this topic of permanent storage, the benefits of using Arweave, Akord, and this new chapter together. So I think yeah, I look forward to it going out. I look forward to the integration and the announcement that it's live, so people can start using this in a very easy way and leveraging all these benefits. So yeah, appreciate you for taking the time today, Pascal. It's been really great.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. One final thing, if people do have more questions about Akord, Arweave, permanent storage, and so on, yeah, please jump into our Discord and ask us there. And you can find an invite link through our profile on X. It's pretty easy to find. So yeah, always happy to talk to people on these topics. And yeah, thanks again for having me. It's been a great conversation, and yeah, hopefully one of many.